Hey, I'm Naomi from the Todoist team, and I'm here with my colleague Heather today to talk to you about all things ADHD and Todoist. As you may or may not know, we have a ton of Todoist users who also have ADHD, and we're always getting questions about how we can better support them or help them support themselves using Todoist. I'm joined here today by my colleague Heather, as I said before, who is our motion designer / video editor and all-around general video powerhouse. You might actually recognize her from some of our shorts. So Heather, do you want to go ahead and give us a little intro to you?
Hi, I'm Heather. As Naomi said, I am the motion designer and video editor here at Todoist, the company behind Todoist. I do myself have ADHD, and while I'm far from an expert, I am very passionate about it. I wasn't diagnosed till I was an adult, so I've really spent a lot of time trying to understand myself and my brain all of these years that I didn't really understand myself and my brain. I would actually say using Todoist is probably one of the ways that I stay the most productive as an adult. It wasn't really until I started using it that I feel quite as focused, like I can really remember things, get things done. And I wasn't even a Todoist user until I started working at Todoist, which is...
I can't believe this. I did not know that. We did a take before this and had it up the first time, and I was like, I did not realize that you didn't use Todoist until you joined the company.
Yeah, I actually, I had trialed it previously, but for another job, but I think we ended up deciding that we really needed a calendar. So hopefully those coworkers, my old boss, hi Mark, might go back and try that again. But yeah, let's talk about ADHD.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds good. So the way that we've decided to do this is I'm going to ask Heather a bunch of questions. We tried to kind of design the questions to cover every basis, but then we're also going to leave the floor open to any of you guys watching in case you want to ask us more questions afterwards. So I will cover all of these. Heather's going to answer, and then we will see in the comments, I guess. Oh, and I've got some quick fire questions as well at the end. All right, so let's just get started by getting a bit of a background into your ADHD journey.
Sure. So I wasn't diagnosed until I was 25. I was a pretty typical, studious, like normal kid. I struggled a lot with procrastination in high school, but I had no idea that I had ADHD until I was working my first like full-time freelance gig out of college. Had been like a server for years before that, which is like a really great job for people with ADHD. All of a sudden, I just couldn't sit in a seat for more than 45 minutes doing this one task that I was hired to do. And I felt so confused. I was like, what is wrong with me? I've always been able to just work. Why can't I work right now? And so I looked a little bit into it. I thought maybe I do actually have ADHD. It runs in my family. My younger sister has it. And yeah, it turns out I did in fact get an ADHD diagnosis. So, and after that, I kind of dove headfirst into just figuring out like what it is my brain does. How do I work with myself? Yeah. And so now I'm 32, and this has just kind of been how I've been figuring out my life since then.
Did you find that certain behaviors you'd caught yourself doing like slotted into place once you had your diagnosis?
It was really interesting. Yeah, one of my therapists that I had for a long time, she pointed out a few things that, you know, she'd be like, oh, that's very ADHD of you. Like getting frustrated when driving or just being like irritable in general. So yeah, I used to find when I was a kid, I would get really, really impatient if things wouldn't like work correctly, or if I just got frustrated, and then I would get very hot and I would feel like, you know, things felt very bad on my body, or like, you know, I just felt like I needed to like punch something. And I've learned later that I was just really overstimulated and I had no coping mechanisms for that. Or habits like needing to draw all the time in school during lectures because I just couldn't pay attention. Just sitting there like listening was just not conducive to how I needed to learn. And apparently that's super common. Sometimes doing something extra with your hands for that additional stimulation can help a lot to enable focus. So yeah, those are just a couple of things, but it was truly like the world opened up. I was like, oh, a lot of this can be explained now.
Wow, that's amazing. So good to get those things validated for yourself after such a long time as well, right?
It did feel extremely validating. I was like, okay, so it's not that there's anything wrong with me. It's just
Yeah,
that my brain works a little differently.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we're going to take a bit of a left turn here and talk about Todoist because I know that's why a lot of people are going to be watching this. But do you want to maybe explain to us why Todoist is a tool that has ended up working for you, and what are maybe some of the features that help you manage your time and stay focused?
I think, and I'm going to absolutely drop the Todoist tagline here, but I think the reason why Todoist is a tool that works for me as a person with ADHD is because it is just so simple to get started. I was always someone who would just write everything on my hand or like quickly throw like a random like notes app note in my phone and just like pray that I find it later. But really, I think like starting with Todoist, all you really need is like quick add and the inbox, and that's you're good to go. If you really struggle with the setup part, maybe you've tried another app where there's a lot of setup you have to try and you do all that and you feel really excited and you feel really motivated and it's new and exciting, and then it gets to the using part and now you're like exhausted. That happens a lot. I think Todoist is a great solution because all you need to do is write a task, set a due date potentially. I like to set due dates, and now it's visible. So that was really how I started, was truly the bare bones. But now today, I would say the quick add widget on my phone is kind of my lifeline sometimes. And truly the today view is my best friend. I set pretty much all deadlines like for today, just so that I know to go in and move things around if I need to later. So yeah, it's awesome for just brain dumping and then visibility.
That simplicity that you're talking about, we had a video go up recently, and Becky, our other colleague, she had said once you've got quick add and due dates down, you've got like 80% of Todoist. Oh, and we can link that video in the cards above as well so that people can go and watch that if they want to learn how to get started. So our next question is, what does a work day look like for you as a person who is fully remote and has ADHD?
Yeah, this is a great question. So this is kind of a lifestyle I never thought I could have. So I really like this one. I would say my worst days start by rolling out of the bed and getting right onto my laptop. As a person with ADHD, I do not recommend that. Unfortunately, to everyone watching, the word is true. Getting up and going for a walk really does help. I'm so sorry to share that with you. I would say my best days start by not immediately grabbing my phone. I take my dog for a quick walk around the block. I have a nice breakfast. I get myself situated, and then I start. I feel as though like not immediately getting in front of a screen helps me a lot. I know a lot of productivity experts say the same thing. I am so far from either an ADHD or a productivity expert, but anecdotally, that is truly the thing that has worked the most for me. And I would say in terms of like the productivity method that works for me, like the style, I'm kind of like a running start, eat the frog person. I can't just eat the frog right away. That's really, really hard. There's no motivating factor that gets me into that task initiation mode. So I have to do a couple of little small things to get the little dopamine hits from task completion. And then I feel enabled to do the hard task that I am either dreading or is the most important. So I'll check my email, I'll go through my inbox, I'll do the things that feel pretty like low effort for me. And then I will get into my P1 for the day, my priority one for the day. And I most recently developed a shutdown ritual. Thanks, Naomi, from our last video.
Well done.
Also link in the cards above. But yeah, so now I make sure to end every day by, at the bare minimum, I will clean up, I will do my to-do list for the next day. And yeah, so I wasn't really doing that before. And then I would like open my laptop in the evening and just get lost in my work inbox. And that's not good for you either. So
no, it's not good for anybody. That just, yeah, I've struggled with that a lot, that like overworking in the evenings or feeling like you always have to be checking in on things. But just as well to sort of backtrack a little bit there and explain to anybody watching what Eat the Frog actually is. We have a video on that as well, which we can link in the cards, but it is basically tackling the kind of biggest, hairiest, scariest task that you have first thing in the morning. So you had said to me before in a different meeting that you were experimenting with a new morning routine. So is that what you meant when you're saying about like walking your dog, having a nice breakfast, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I actually left kind of the silliest part about this, and this may be very shocking to some people of certain cultures, but I've always been a very shoes off in the house person. It's not a cultural thing for me, it's a preference. But I've started by creating a fake commute for myself when I'm working from home in the morning. I leave my house, and actually, I think this is something one of my professors in college told me, but I leave my house and then I come back and I don't take off my shoes and I sit down at my work desk already set up and ready for me. And then I sit down, I'm like, I'm at work now. So there's kind of like a switch where I go from I'm at home to I'm at work. And I find that really, really helps.
That's a really interesting one. That's not something I'm very bad at, is just being slobby when working from home. Like the comfiest clothes and shoes will do. But actually, the days where you find yourself dressing up a little bit more, I think they're the days, or feeling a bit more put together, you do tend to feel more productive, weirdly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think now I pretty much always dress like as if I'm going to leave the house and see other people. And it really does a lot for my ability to feel like I'm at work.
And to focus. That's
Mhm.
really interesting. They're great tips. Okay. What skills have you developed that support you the most? And how does Todoist help you with those skills?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest skills that I've developed as a work from home person with ADHD is I do try to leverage like co-working spaces, libraries, and coffee shops for days that I feel very like low focus, low energy. I think the term is body doubling, where being around people kind of encourages you to focus in on the thing that you need to be doing. Being around people helps you just narrow your focus. It almost feels like external accountability. Like people are watching, you can kind of start working. So I find that that really helps me. I would say Todoist helps me with that because I would have like a leaving the house checklist. Even if I don't check off the tasks, it at least exists so I can reference it really quickly. Because any day that I have to pack a backpack and go somewhere, it's almost guaranteed I will forget something. So that's very helpful. I always try to write things down the second I think of it. I'm notorious for in the middle of a meeting being like, hang on, I need to add that to Todoist. And truly, that's the only way I can work. I will not remember something in 10 minutes. And so quick add, whether that be, pressing Q on my keyboard at my laptop or using the widget on my phone, I use it all the time. As soon as a thought pops into my head, I'm getting it into my Todoist immediately. I also try to reduce distractions during the day. That is a really big one for me. I do have like app blockers installed on all of my devices. Sometimes I have to use them, sometimes I don't. But the way that I do this at work primarily is I actually had created a like today in work filter for myself where I would only see tasks that were in one particular project for work that I had, and then anything in my team workspace that was assigned to me and do that day. Now we have the really awesome like view filters option. So you can just go into your today view and filter by workspace. And now you only have those things that are assigned to you due today immediately in your field of view. So that is a really, really big one for me. I pretty much use that exclusively as my home view whenever I'm working.
And when you're talking about limiting distractions, do you like to work with music on or any kind of background noise, or no?
That really depends. As the motion designer and video editor, I can only do that so much of the time. But I do really, really love listening to music while I'm working. If I'm working on an animation and there's no sound, it's awesome. I've really gotten into K-pop recently because it's just like the full high production pop stuff that my brain really seems to like, and it puts me in a really good mood, a really focused mood. So that's kind of what I've been listening to. Music helps a lot.
Love it. I don't think I've ever listened to K-pop, but I feel very inspired to give it a go.
It's so fun. It's so fun. I don't speak Korean at all, but it's still very fun to listen to.
Amazing. Okay, next question. Have you tried any things that don't work for you, and what works instead?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say specifically in terms of work-related things, I actually find that Pomodoro doesn't really work for me. I think the visual timer is really nice if you have one, but Pomodoro is by default just too short. And I also find, like, even when I lengthen it, I really struggle with taking breaks in the middle of a task. And I've tried, I know that it's encouraged a lot of the time to walk away from your work and come back to it. But as someone with ADHD, I don't really find that that's super possible for me. I really like to be able to sit down and be working on a task to completion if possible. I do try to break things into smaller, manageable tasks so that I can kind of like hit check marks along the way. And that seems to be like a good stopping point sometimes. But if I'm sitting down and I need to like finish a video for today, for example, and it's, you know, not a super long amount of time I'm going to be working on that video, I will usually sit down and do it for the full amount of time before I'm up and taking a break. Reinitiation is very tough. So Pomodoro doesn't totally work for me, but what I've done instead is I've started time blocking my like working time in Todoist. So if I know I'm going to be working on a video for X amount of hours before I need to take lunch, I create that time blocking. And I actually, this was something that you mentioned in the most recent work shutdown ritual, was that you only set a certain amount of time for yourself to do something, you're likely to get it done in that time. And so that has really proven true for me. So time blocking, using like the calendar, the day calendar in Todoist has really helped.
The week view in week in upcoming, the week layout in upcoming view, that's what it's called.
Yes.
Game changer for my work week. See, being able to like time block tasks and have your calendar events in there. It has honestly like really made me love Todoist even more. And I know we're going to say that because we work here, but genuinely we use this every day. So how do you avoid burning out at work? Because I believe this is something that people with ADHD specifically really do struggle with.
Yeah. So this is a really great question because it's something that I've always struggled with. I sometimes feel like Superwoman. I can just go. I'll reach the end of my workday and I still have more time, more energy, more productivity, and I want to do a little bit more, or I want to really push myself. And the thinking is always like, I don't always feel this way. I should take advantage of it while I can. And that I have learned is a recipe for burnout. Just because you have the like executive function to keep going doesn't mean that you necessarily should. It takes a lot out of you, and there is recovery time. And if you have a job where that recovery time isn't necessarily possible, maybe due to like a workload issue or just the nature of your job, trying to avoid that burnout as much as possible is important. So instead, what I do is I reach a point of completion and I just try to set like a couple of priority one tasks for myself. I just try to listen to like the way that my body and my mind are feeling. If I'm starting to feel very, very unfocused, like I catch myself getting distracted a lot, I'm like, I should probably keep it light and do the most important things and try to wrap up today. Or, you know, if I feel really motivated and really focused, I still force myself to stop after a certain point, because by doing that, I found that I don't really experience those full burnout days anymore. And, you know, I understand that I'm in a pretty privileged position. I have a really lovely job and we really encourage work-life balance. And it is easier for me to disconnect just due to the nature of my work, but that does really work for me. I would encourage anyone who has ADHD to do their best to try to manage those higher executive function days, to just allow yourself to rest anyway, and preserve that energy, because the momentum really, really helps.
When you were telling me this, one of the things that came to my mind is like, if you're experiencing these days where you have more energy and you've got, you know, higher executive function, why should you give all of that to work, right?
Yeah.
Like, give a portion of it to your work, great, like take advantage of it. But then if you've got your work cutoff time, then that gives you the energy to go and enjoy your social life with the same fervor, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I would say definitely carry that idea though into outside of work activities. I've definitely been the person to wrap up like a full almost 9-hour work day on a super high productivity day, and then I'm gonna go for a run, and then I'm gonna go meet up with all my friends,
Right.
and then you're still burned out the next day. So definitely keep in mind that even if you've had like a really full work day and you still have that energy, just still, try to take it fairly easy. Unfortunately, our brains are not on the same neurotypical schedule that everyone else's are, and it can be very hard to fit it all into one day. So try to be realistic, I would say.
And I suppose it's a case of trying to learn to like pump the brakes before you really need to pump the brakes.
Yeah, precisely. And that really works for me. That may not work for others, but I find that otherwise I will burn out really quickly.
And are there specific things that remind you to do that, or like make you aware that you should be doing that whenever you're having those kinds of days?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just tuning into the lack of focus that I might be experiencing. I might be more easily distracted. There's a really great video on how to ADHD, I believe, that's like about the wall, and the wall being that initiation, like the executive function of starting something. And some days that wall is just really large and impending and inevitable, and you may not get over it, but you're going to expend a lot of energy just trying to get over the wall, if that makes sense. So if I find that the wall feels really, really, really strong that day, I have to eat my guilt, and I have to tell myself, I'm spending a lot of time just trying to start this task, and I can feel it like draining my energy a little bit. I'm getting tired physically and mentally. So that's usually a good time for me to stop. That's like a good time to take a long break, maybe come back when you've rested a little bit, and then wrap up whatever you need to. Yeah, or just come back the next day with more rest and more focus. Tomorrow is another day. So that's usually what works for me and what notifies me that it's time to stop.
Do you think on days like that, whenever you've got that wall, is it better to try to tackle quick wins then, or like are there other things that you would do instead?
Yeah, absolutely. I will usually try to step away and take a walk at that point. And then that usually gives me just enough energy to come back and do exactly like you said, like quick wins. Like I still got things done today, even if it wasn't the most important task. I was able to at least clear out some other things for myself so that the rest of my week is easier and I can really laser focus in on this. That is something that I do.
Perfect. And we will get the link to the video that you're talking about from How to ADHD and put that in the description box below. All right. Well, our last question is, do you have any advice for anyone who might be just starting out on their journey with ADHD?
Of course. So I guess, first of all, just know that you're not alone, especially if you are an adult watching this video. Sometimes your journey starts kind of later in life, and that's pretty normal. We're in a time where there are so many accessible resources that, previously we may not have understood everything about ADHD brains, or it might have been a lot harder to access some of those materials and resources. So just start learning as much as you can about the way your brain works. And then at that point, accept and learn to work with yourself, not against yourself. I've found that you can't fight nature. And there was a point in time in the history of man where our brains were needed to survive. And while that might feel at odds sometimes with the way the world works now, it doesn't mean that you can't work in a way that supports yourself and still achieves the same things. You just have to accept and acknowledge that the way that your home or your office or your work style might be a little bit different than someone else's. So, and that's okay. And I would say not trying to force ourselves into the shoes of a more neurotypical person will benefit you mentally, physically, emotionally in the long run.
That is amazing. I think people are going to get so much out of this conversation. Quick fire questions. Let's go with a couple of obvious ones, and then I'll see if my brain warms up. Tea or coffee?
Oh, coffee.
Morning or night?
Ooh, morning. I don't like to say that, but as much as I'm a night owl, morning is so much better for me and my brain.
Walking or running?
Walking.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Answering that question, I think, always feels weird because you want to be like dogs, but also I don't hate cats.
I am a both person. I just only have a dog, and she is watching me, so I have to say dogs.
A mechanical keyboard or a regular keyboard?
Ooh, a mechanical keyboard.
That is a mechanical keyboard.
I like the sound of it, and I also play a lot of games, so mechanical is just the way to go.
Real book or Kindle?
Real book. I think a Kindle's so convenient, but I just like the smell of a real book.
Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Yes, also big breakfast fan. What's your favorite breakfast?
That's a hard question. My favorite breakfast is if anytime I visit my partner in New York and we go to his deli, that's my favorite breakfast. We get a bagel with bacon, egg, and cheese.
Yeah, my favorite breakfast is not a real breakfast. I'm just going to share this. This might not even make it in, but my favorite breakfast is cold pizza from the fridge with a cup of tea.
I love that. People might be very offended by that, but I also love cold pizza breakfast, and I'm not ashamed to admit it.
There's something about it. I don't know what it is. Cold pizza the day after. It's just the best.
Good. It's so good.
And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe or like this video if you find it helpful. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.